Good evening and welcome to Santa Barbara Forum. My name is John Macker. I'm your host tonight. I'm not your regular host. I'm the fill-in go-to guy when they don't have a host for the night, and that's me. So we're going to have a little fun tonight. Normally, we try to come up with a topic that will entice our audience. So tonight we decided the subject will be sex, money, and Maseratis. Unfortunately, two of those three we did not have here tonight, so we had to change over to a different subject topic matter because we do not want you to go to Desperate Wives of Rhode Island right now, which I know you're ready to flick to. So we're going to go the high road tonight. We're going to talk about art, not culture, but art. And this is going to be a great subject. We just happen to have probably the greatest artist of all here in Santa Barbara right now. With us as our guest tonight. This is going to be a terrific show. You're going to love this guy. He's my favorite. I'm going to introduce him right now, Bill Dalziel. Now, Bill is a Renaissance guy. This guy does everything. He's an accomplished artist. He's a sculptor. He's an architect. He's a man who owned one of the most famous restaurants in Hollywood. I mean, this guy has done it all. There's nothing that I don't think that Bill has done, and we're very happy to have you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks, Bill, for inviting me.
And we're going to talk about art tonight, and if that gets really boring, we want to talk about Art's girlfriend.
Okay.
So we're going to move on to that. Okay, anyway. Art. This is, and we're not talking about your garden variety art of everything that's painted every day, blah, blah. We're going to talk about the big picture of art. And this is something that you weaves its way through everything that you do in your life. I mean, whether it's art, you're a sculptor, whether it's your business, whatever. So I'm going to start off with this. Most people define, I want to give a definition of art. Because many people, there's an old cliche that says, people say, I don't know what art is, but I know it when I see it. What's your reaction to that? I mean, that's kind of like, is that pretty much?
Pretty basic. Art is a quality of communication. And what you just said was a communication. I like what I like, or what communicates to me. If I did a piece of art that was very difficult for you to understand, you wouldn't consider that to be art, even though I did, because it didn't communicate. So the first rule of the two rules of art is resultant communication. What occurs when I show you what I did.
What about the eye of the beholder whole thing? I mean, you're saying that, I mean, does each piece of art communicate differently to different to people differently? Is that what you're saying?
Let's just break it down. Every individual is a viewpoint, a point from which they are viewing. Now, I present something over here for you to see, and if you can recognize it, and hopefully the way I painted it or built, whatever it is, designed it, that form follows the purpose for you to even have been there to participate in it. And always you have to receive the reward of your participation. In art, I mean, the best art is when it makes people participate in it. They want to be part of it. It's so aesthetic, or so high on the range of, we'll say, the harmonics of emotion. And you see it in big stadiums where they all have the same emotional sense when they hear something.
Connection, you mean?
Yeah, they all connect to that same emotional. It may be, it's usually they're flowing admiration at them. They just love what they're hearing so much that there's admiration, which happens to be the most valuable quantity in the universe.
We talked about this earlier today, so it's a good question, and you gave a great answer, so I want to go over that again. Are people born with as I asked you before, are you actually born with an innate sense that you know art, or it's just part of you, or is it something that's later taught, or is there, how does that, you think that
Okay, well, I believe that life is art. Art is life. in the very beginning, I mean, when you're born, I'm not talking about perhaps in the womb or all that, but when you start to become, you start to be, during that time, one of the first impulses, it seems to be, is that you want to communicate that being, which is you. You want to show someone that. Not just, hi, happy, I'm here, need to be fed, little baby, whatever, but they want those other things, which is that valuable particle called admiration, things like that, the higher levels of emotional. So art is you create a way to receive the most valuable things that you think you require to survive.
Now, psychologists often say that at the age of 2 or 3, pretty much the human brain has now evolved, and you're kind of getting that's pretty much.
You're getting
You think you think that there's some kind of at that very early age when everything is formulating before it actually. Do you think a lot of that happens at a very, very early age with children, or do their stimuli?
Well, it depends on what kind of family they grow up in. If they grow up in a family that's made up of a lot of fixed ideas and there's not much room for other things or new ideas, then they're going to have that. But and that's the way most families are, they become more strict with the children when they become ambulatory, when they become toddlers. Discipline comes in, confinement, can't let them get away, all that stuff comes in, and that has an effect on that individual. Got to behave, discipline comes in, doesn't have the freedom it wants, it learns how to protest and not protest, but that's the way the normal is. So even that's a creation by a little artist who's trying to learn how to survive in an environment.
Mm-hmm. And their means of expression at that age. I mean, how important, there's so much importance put in, expressing kids in that particular young age, even up through kindergarten, what have you, trying to get out there.
I think it's a form of extroverting someone, to get them to participate with other people. It's a form of communicating again. We all know that when people get depressed, that they introvert and they close up. When I did art therapy at Cottage Hospital in the old days, up there on Sundays, these people were so depressed that they couldn't even think of what their favorite food looked like. They couldn't even draw a hamburger. I mean, it just wasn't in them. They were but every now and then, one of them would pick up something and draw something, and that was sort of a way of them getting out a little bit. And it was just before lunch, of course, so it was really, I always used food. I thought it was a basic thing for them. And it worked, but it was slow, very slow.
Have you ever seen any of this art from, for lack of another term, because it's kind of an old term, but from asylums, for people who are basically neurotic, psychotic, what have you, where they paint some extraordinary art I've seen from people who, well, for lack of another term, we say they're crazy, but it's not crazy. They have issues that are psychotic or whatever.
Well, it depends upon that art.
And I've seen some of that art, which is quite extraordinary.
Is it abstract?
Totally abstract.
Okay. It's very interesting because I think through our experience with the medium and all the information we have learned to appreciate abstract art. Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful phenomenon because that means we get to appreciate an individual's feeling about life through that particular medium. Mm-hmm. And they do that. And the more open to their emotions, mm-hmm. uncontrolled, the more exciting they can throw onto the canvas or into the work. And then we get to see something that you never see, that kind of excitement or that kind of craziness or that kind of...
I bring that up because one of our local residents, you know, Jonathan Winters, a comedian,
Yes.
who paints a lot of art, once said to me that when he was he was in the funny house there for a short stint in his life,
Yeah.
where they had him in the, you know, psychiatric wards. He said he painted some of his best paintings, and he would say that some of these people who were there, they would paint these extraordinary paintings that were whatever coming out of their psychic or whatever, but he said there was a lot of great art that she said you would see with these people that was, well, let's say not great art, but I don't know, that's my term, but interesting art, fascinating art, something that you'd go, wow. You'd step back and you'd look and it said something to you.
Now, I own a pen and ink by Jonathan, which I bought from him.
Yeah.
And he goes with emotion first. Completely. And then the form comes to him like a cartoon or a pelican diving for a fish, but it's done so quickly that it's just gone. And it's like he has been able to release himself or separate himself from the rigidity of other people's ideas or maybe even education. You know? Free himself up so that he could do just that thing at an instant. You know, that timeless moment. So that it's like, it looks like he did it in 2 seconds. He probably did.
What about graffiti? Some of this art that you've seen it down in LA, certainly. Some of it's pretty damn good when you see what they have done down there.
The graphics and
these kids, and you look at it and you go, wow, this stuff is really
It's
incredible.
wonderful.
They're murals they paint underneath the freeways, you know, and
I would
so
like to have them do that in 3-dimensional sculptures.
wow, that would be fast. Yeah.
Because it's like the Rushmore, but done in letters. Because some of those graphics, if they were done in sculpture or bas reliefs on the side of something, pull them up, because that's what they are, they're 3-dimensional. They'd be wonderful sculptures. Just by their, and that is another thing, when you play with one, like a square can, and long enough, and you're an artist, pretty soon you get really good with that
Yes,
can.
you can, huh?
Yeah.
Now, I've seen your art. Your art is very unique. How do you define your art? Because I've seen a lot of your art.
Mine has been a journey to find Shibui.
Which, by the way, tell them what that means in Japanese.
It means eternal, elegant beauty, or the recognition of it. That wonderful stone you took home, or pebble, or you have in your drawer of your dresser, all those wonderful things. All of those gave you some pleasure that was beyond everything else. You recognize something. And the Japanese call that the recognition of eternal, elegant beauty. Like when you fall in love with somebody. You recognize that. You don't recognize the mole, or you don't recognize something else. You recognize that which that individual really has there and wants everybody to see. Now, most of us just aren't very good at exposing ourselves enough for that. You know, we're a little afraid of being betrayed if we do, so we're very conservative. But that excitement and recognition, you can find it by doing it yourself. You know, sandpaper and a piece of wood, or you can. I've been creating it using dyes and inks and electric irons and everything I could use in order to find it. There's this particular pleasure that all of us get in what we do, and it either can give just me the pleasure because of the doing this, or it can be something that I do so that someone else looks at it and goes, wow, don't know what it is, but it sure looks great.
I love it. I don't know what it is, but I know it's
Yeah.
art.
Yeah, I don't know who she is, but boy,
Boy, I
she
like
sure
that.
looks great
She
to me.
sure smells great.
Yeah, something happens, and there's nothing you can
perfume
do
off
about it.
the
You
eyes.
recognize that in its eternity.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking for always when I'm doing something. And it may take me boring days of constructing redwood things, and then it gets done, and then I go, that's what I was trying to
Speaking of that, what you're talking about right now are your sculptures. Now, you have some great sculptures. You're making a new one now for Westmont. You had one over here at City College. You have, I've seen a numerous of them. Now, what kind of artistic leap is there from doing your paintings and your ink drawings and what have you,
Okay.
where on a flat surface here, a one-dimensional surface, now suddenly you jump over here to do some of these beautiful sculptures are wonderful, especially the ones in wood I love.
well, those are political.
Yeah,
Remember, the other ones are they're pleasure, and I love to do them. But I also like to do things that have some significance, like a face with its eyes closed, and there's a flag melted over its face. You know, and you can just lie it down like this, or you can hang it on a wall. It can make you think someone's dead, or it can make you think someone's asleep. I like to do that too. I mean, paradoxes. Or a brick wall. Of course, it isn't a real brick wall, but a woman's face coming out of the brick wall, and the back of her head is bald, and it happens to look like a pregnant woman's belly. Now, I don't know why I do it like that, but I use I think it comes from industrial design, going to Art Center School, where I learned how to design things that were functional, cars and appliances and graphics, communications, corporate symbols. So all that sort of has come to a settlement where now I can just pick and choose from all those experiences and use them to communicate the things I like to communicate. That's why I do cartoons. Sometimes the only way I can explain something is to draw a cartoon, because it's just too hard to make a sculpture like that. So I was telling you the other day what initiates this sometimes, and I remember my mother telling me that I should never ignore this blessing that God gave me to always want to be in present time, all the time. And I told her one day, I think it's more like a curse, because you can't sleep. You're always semi-conscious, and you have to be exhausted to finally fall asleep, because there's too much going on everywhere to experience. Anyway.
let's jump a little bit to the East-West philosophy of art here, which we're going to talk about, because this is quite different. There's a big difference in how the Eastern and Western artists look at their art and how they do it. And I'm going to oversimplify here, and you're going to tell me, correct me here, but I always think of the Eastern art being a way to take very simple things to convey whatever they're trying to convey, where the Western art tends to be a little bit more complicated to convey what it is. That's an oversimplification, but I like it, and I want to talk to you about that particular triangle we talk about how all these things connect, especially with the Eastern, because you've had a lot of influence from Eastern Japanese art. You have many friends who are Japanese. You've been around it all your life. You're currently working on a project right now, which is designing a Japanese
Garden
garden.
for a Japanese family.
For a Japanese
That's
family,
amazing.
there you go, of all people. So let's talk about that. How do you see that Eastern? Because obviously it has a lot of influence on your art.
When I was looking, and I still am looking, I'm still looking for why everything works and how does it work and all of that. They enticed me with things like form follows function, or less is more, and wondered how they got to that. So through a lot of studying, I found some Japanese scholars that wrote a book called, I think it's called The Book of Changes. It's an old book. And they spent years breaking everything down. I mean, twists, turns, knots, compression, I mean, everything that there is. But when they got finished, they broke it down even simpler. So I think the best way I can do this is they broke it down like this into a triangle. First, you have an idea, and there's a purpose. There's the physical world, material, because we can use this as philosophy too, by the way. And we can take this beyond this. And this is, we'll call the hand, or the craftsman. Now, when you're, as a designer, and even as an artist, and you're looking at my canvas, I'm going to use trowels and paint. My idea is to do the fires in the hills of Santa Barbara, and what's my purpose? To communicate how bad the fires are, and to help people remember. Now, but where's the product? Where's the final valuable product of all that understanding, all that feeling of affinity, all that understanding of the reality? They come together right here in the middle. And this becomes the form, whatever it is. A new hammer, a new screwdriver. It could be a tool, but it's always the final valuable product that it should be. We do a lot of copying and improving on the same idea rather than make it even simpler. We'll take a potato peeler, and they've gotten pretty complicated now, where it got away from just a little knife. Now it's got all kinds of things and safety devices and big rubber handles and the purple and yellow and things hanging off of them. The purpose is still the same, but they've just
What
embellished
do
it.
they do? Change the idea, or are they
No.
changing, the artist is changing the...
They're just, they're what do you call it? Putting more fins on the Cadillac. That's all it is. But if you start with all of this equal or in balance, the form will follow the function, and it will be less rather than more. And you'll use the right material because your purposes are on line. It's like a balance. You can bounce around from each one of those until you get it just right. And this will end up being a sculpture. It could be nudes. Doesn't matter. It could be a tensegrity mass that Bucky built. But it comes from that. Sometimes the purpose can be simply, I want a better world. Or I want to participate in the evolution of man and find things that will help him feel better or work better or live better or feel better about his environment. You know,
Does this apply just for art only, or does
Everything.
This, everything?
I mean, we could turn that into relationships. We could turn that into a group gathering, a political party that's formed in the middle of all that.
Now, I did a show with Buckminster Fuller, one of your great
Mentors.
mentors and idols in life, Bucky Fuller, who created the geodesic dome, amongst other things.
I wish he was here right now.
Yeah, he would be great right here, right now. He was
We wouldn't understand him.
it doesn't matter, but he was a fantastically interesting guy to listen to, right?
Yeah.
What did you like about Fuller when it came to
University of
design?
Michigan?
Yeah.
Well,
his was,
here's what he said. Well, first of all, when you listen to him, when you listen to him, you usually started falling asleep in the first 10 minutes because he's gone past things you just don't understand. Second time, you can get about 20 minutes. Third time, you're getting a little bit better understanding what he's talking about. Now, finally, I remember one evening, Associate Professor Arar K. Lottie at the University of Michigan in his home drinking Turkish coffee. And he was an industrial designer, an architect, I think he was. Anyway, Bucky said something like, hey, everything goes great. Just do what you're supposed to be doing. Out of nowhere. And we said, okay, well, how do you know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing? He said, well, as a passenger on the spaceship, if you see something that needs to be done and you know how to do it as well or better than anybody else, then it's your responsibility to the rest of us passengers to go do that until someone else comes along and will take over that. And we thought, okay, so a lot of us tried that. I've tried it. And it's amazing how it works. And we said, well, what about when the rent's due on your apartment? Don't worry about it. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you'll be surprised. When it's due, it'll be there. Or if it's not there, it'll go okay. He said, worrying is a new word.
that's good.
And he's the one that told me what worrying really meant, and that was eating yourself. And he never ate himself. Never worried about things. He was always one moment to the next moment to the next moment. That was it.
Art and architecture.
Mm.
Let me just jump over there for one moment, because you're an architect, you've drawn and designed, Lord knows, enough things that you've built and what have you, from homes to what have you.
Nothing better than having someone live in something you designed.
That you designed.
And they love it.
Right.
I mean, they really, really.
But architecture puts you into a three-dimensional situation here
Human
again. Now
engineering.
you're going from,
Human engineering is different. Now it's really different for me because it's really simple. Where before I got complicated in the materials.
well, does
What
function
was
follow
more-
art, or art follow function when it comes to architecture, the old question?
Form follows function, or it should.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of guidelines. We have the golden section we can go to, with the Egyptians came up with, which is that proportion of one line to another line. So we don't have to be totally guessing at relationships of things. It's been done before, and we can use that information, like Mies van der Rohe, that office building or apartment building in Chicago along the water. There, the whole building is a golden section of itself, and every window is a golden section of itself, and every proportion is a golden section of itself, and it's made out of aluminum and steel and glass, and when you drive by, the building almost disappears. It's so perfectly balanced in its proportions, and it's a big building. But to us, it's so. So what do? We'll complicate it, twist it, put a lie on architecture, and make it interesting.
Of all the things
Like
that
jazz.
all the things you've designed in life, do you have a favorite one in a particular? Could be small, could be big, but anything, that one you would just look back and say, that particular one really was my best perfect?
Well, when I was young,
And why?
I was partially paralyzed when I was about 9 or 10. My left side, and they put me to bed. And only had a radio. But I had pads of paper, and I had Popular Mechanics, those kinds of things. And I remember designing, an elevation, plan view, dimensions of a biplane. that surrounded your body. You put it on like a suit.
Like a suit?
Yeah. I called it the smallest airplane in the world. And I was like 10 years old when I drew it. I think that was the most clever thing I ever came up with, because now we actually could probably do that. We have people who actually can fly and with their own body now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Jet propelled and all of that.
Art and furniture. Now there's
Less is more.
right, well, we were talking about the other day, the two great furniture designers of the 20th
Charles
century.
and Ray Ames.
Right, now the
My
Ames
goodness.
stuff is just beautiful. I mean, I've seen some of it in the museums back in Washington. I mean, their stuff is classic, and I guess that was from the 20s, was it?
This is a couple, an architect and a painter,
Right.
who got together and loved doing things together. Riding bicycles together, living together, and they saw a plywood machine in a lumber mill. You know, one of those gooey, and the glue everywhere, and just an ugly machine that laminated plywood and pressed it together like that. And they went and bought one and put it in their living room of their house. And they experimented with that machine, the two of them, like just drinking wine. I mean, they were great. They came up with a way of bending the plywood and forming it into a seat, or into what they would put their black cushion on their Ames chair. It would fit inside of a plywood. And they're the ones that came up with that. Formed plywood. And the two of them did it in their living room. Cool people. I mean, that's just one of the great things they did. I think they got into film. They did a lot of wonderful things.
But tables, chairs, I mean, all
Everything.
complete furniture, and
Everything.
everything had a total simplicity to it. It was all as if it was one. I always think of it when I look at it.
Yeah,
Just like there was no breaks in whatsoever. It just was all one formed.
They like to float. I mean, they like their furniture to have a float look to it. So they'd always put a pedestal under it. So what you thought was something floating in space. You see the legs sticking out below, but nothing vertical. Nothing compression. Only thing. I mean, that's cool. I mean, you know that's what they thought about.
Art and jewelry. Here's another side, this is a big one.
It's what the history is that about.
Right, I mean,
Decorating bodies with things.
and this goes back, of course, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's nothing new. But this is a very intricate, exquisite piece of art we do when it comes to jewelry, especially because it's so small and detailed and so delicate, as opposed to larger pieces of art.
I don't know. Jewelry, I mean, I wear these beads because they're part of the family. And, everybody had them all the way down the family line. And we kind of put them all together finally in a bowl and put them on me, because it had all that stuff from Grandma and her chest and all that grungy stuff that they find in their things. And I took that as part of and became my talisman. Now, I don't wear it as decoration. I wear it as a little magic to keep me healthy, things like that. My daughters put it together for me. There are big postulates about it. I think if people wore their talisman instead of decorated themselves, I think they probably feel better.
Now, explain what a talisman is for, I mean, I know what it is, but it can be a number of things. And we were talking about this the other night at dinner with our friend Robert Erringer about all the ones he had that he wanted to put onto a necklace. And let's talk about that, what they mean. And people have a lot of them in their life and often don't know what they are.
Well, the best way, I said before, I said if you go to your drawer of your office your desk, or you go to that little compartment in the top, or you go to your dresser drawer where you keep all those things that you picked up on the beach in Hawaii, and all the things that grandma left you, and that funny button that came from somewhere, or that little political thing. All these little things that, I mean, I have a rattlesnake tail that was a rattlesnake that tried to kill my oldest son, Sean, when we lived in Malibu, and I tried to kill that snake. It was got about 3 feet of him. And I mean, I couldn't believe that that snake wanted to attack him. It's like, what is your idea? But I cut his tail off after I killed him and kept the tail as a talisman of that event, as part of his protection.
Now, a talisman, again, a little bit more definition here, is this, what's the spiritual meaning then of it? What's the connection between that physical object and us humans, and why do we care? That's, and you don't know, all right.
What?
I'm going to leave that.
There's
a connection. I think that's the first thing that we were talking about the other night. When you asked Robert, you said, you know, what do you have in your drawer? You have this, 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 and this. Now, what is important to you? I mean, how does that?
And he said, can I put in my talismans things that I bought?
Right.
And I said, no. Talisman find you. I mean, you recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
Like in serendipitism. Those are moments of serendipity when you weren't looking for something, but it showed itself to you, and it was that elegant, eternal beauty you recognized in it, or an event, some event of trauma, and you kept it.
Could be a pebble on the beach.
Mostly they are. A lot of people have little pebbles and things that they've kept for all their life.
And these are put together similar to what you've done.
You can do that.
A necklace, you wear it because you keep those close to you.
Does
it bring you good luck? Does it prevent you from harm? I mean, what's the purpose?
I think it has to do with harmony.
Mm-hmm.
We all create electricity, or electrochemical body, and we do create electricity that flows out. Just walk into a room, and when someone's angry, is sitting in a chair someplace, you can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
That's that electrical flows that are flowing everywhere. Or you can be absent of it and be an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
Where were we? When I get to the empty cup, it's like everything vanishes.
Talisman. I'm talking about what the purpose of them and how they connect to you in life, because there's a lot of them, and some people sell them. Some people think they're gems, maybe. Some people think they're gems. And what I'm trying to ask here is that, are they objects that you would buy in a store? Then someone says, "Oh, this purple crystal gem is a talisman." What you're saying is that something that comes to you. Not something you...
Right. I mean, you could go to a pawn shop maybe and find something in there and go, wow.
You could be walking on a beach one day and I just find a particular shell that...
Or a branch.
For whatever, or a branch, you're right.
It can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's that recognition of eternal beauty again. Now, talisman have more significance and more mental mass attached to them, we'll say, because they belong to your karma. Your electricity, your energy. And that's why you keep them close to you. Bags are good if you don't want anybody to see what they are. Little leather pouch you keep over your heart, or I've seen Indians that have a pouch that slings inside their clothes, and the pouch is down here, under their clothes. And you say that's their magic. No, that's their talisman. They feel better walking around everybody else with having their...
And these are in virtually every culture, aren't they? I mean...
Everybody I know.
Every culture has...
I mean, even modern cultures have even separate out groups of people in present time, even in America. They have their talismans. Some of them are tattoos.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
They mark their body with that karma that they want to have. Kind of cool, isn't it, that that's what they do? But anyway, that's talisman. You can't create your talisman.
They just come to you.
They come to you.
Mhm.
You collected them. That's also, I mean, I told Robert, I said, take your talisman and lay them out on the bed sheet. Separate them all an inch away from each other and see what you got. See who you are, or who you thought you were, or where you're going. It's all there. Anyway, that's one of the ways of staying at present time.
You've done so many things, and I want to just jump ahead here for 1 second, because I know we've got about 3 hours left here to go on the telethon, so
Great.
we need to fill that out.
Okay. We want donations.
We want donations now. Can you send the money into
That's
us? Make the check out
Please.
too. I want to talk about your business. I mean, you've done so many things. We're talking about art here, but here's another form of art, what I consider a form of art. You had your own business in Hollywood, one of the #1 restaurants, certainly one of the most famous restaurants in Hollywood, called $2 Bills. Everybody you probably had, God, Lord knows how many celebrities and people came to your place and what
Wonderful
have you.
people.
Now, that's another form, I think, of art in life, where you're bringing people together and you're bringing humanity together into this, environment that you've set up.
When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like Bucky said,
Mm-hmm.
that happens.
That happens.
It's amazing.
Mhm.
And I look back at how that happened, and someone came to me about a burnt-out clothing store for $400 a month, and they wanted a 10-year lease.
But
I
you
said,
have-
sure.
But you had never done that before.
No.
You've never been in that business.
No.
So you, again,
I
which is the
just-
wonderful thing in
I-
life, you took risk and you jumped in, right?
Got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, went down to the LA fruit market and the big market down there, and bought all my vegetables, put them in my VW van, and drove them to Hollywood. And I couldn't afford a commercial refrigeration, so I had 6 household refrigerators standing up on pipe legs filled with vegetables, because I couldn't have a real refrigerator. I just did it.
And you had music.
Well, we eventually had a
entertainment,
nightclub.
Right.
Here's what happened when I look back at it, and it's very difficult to recreate that, because a lot of people have asked me to open up another one, start one in Santa Barbara. And I said, that place fulfilled a need that was wanted badly. And what it was that was up in the edge of the Hollywood Hills, and all the big clubs, the Troubadour and everybody else, anybody came to town, you couldn't get a show there. Go to $2 Bills. You can show for 2 hours on Tuesday night, and your girlfriend can collect $2 admission for your money. Go ahead if you're any good.
You
The
never-
place was filled all
Yeah.
during the week with
Yeah.
people wanting to be showcased. Some of them were crazy people, spoons and all kinds of stuff. But they got a chance to showcase. That was a whole thing. And that was probably the most rewarding for me, because people really appreciated that, to be able to do that.
It was an open mic type of deal.
Well, no, they would actually come in and audition, so we knew they were real. And
So spoons were okay.
yeah, that one was pretty good. He had electronic spoons. It was really strange. He liked to play with the lights off. It was just
Did
really
you just
weird.
wake up one morning and have an epiphany that nobody just goes in the restaurant business. I mean, there's so much preparation to go into that. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. And you had a great club, because you brought in so many artists and people from Hollywood that
Yeah,
made it
a lot of people
really
got a break there.
fantastic. Did you have a lot of your art there on the walls?
Well, I did for a while, but it was a stained glass, Tiffany lights, wood shingles on the wall, which you couldn't do now. Sort of hippie type place. Little lanterns, and it's very comfortable. People would get in there and they just didn't want to leave all day. My recipes, I researched them, came up with them. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I think when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you don't get into why or should I do it,
should
or
do it, yeah.
health inspector says, geez, don't you ought to do that? And I go, okay, I'll do that for you.
How many
You don't
years?
argue with them. You go, everybody becomes part of the flow. You don't get anybody resisting it. Everybody wants it. The waitresses want it to happen. I mean, everybody wants it to be a success. You know, what better thing is that? I ended up buying half the block.
How many years did you have that? That was a long time.
Enough.
No.
I had it enough.
You stopped counting after so many. Now, when you moved here to Santa Barbara, you built a beautiful home. I mean, I love your place. It's an artist retreat that probably defies description. It's your own,
Oh, the one I'm living in now.
Right.
Yeah.
which
That's
is
the one on Olive Street.
which is unique, to say the very least.
I think
And I said to you, it's very Japanese because the way you've taken your property and built it off.
it's in a flood area, so she had stone
And-
walls.
And just briefly, because I don't have a lot of time left here, to talk about your fish. And
Oh.
you're one of the special people here in Santa Barbara who
Nobody's
takes.
supposed to know about all that, but they don't know where the house
Well,
is.
they don't know where the house is.
Okay, good.
We can talk about it.
Uh,
We don't want any visitors.
Well, I happen to have the privilege of taking care of, which I really don't take care of, but I do watch them very carefully and aerate the water. Do give them trout chow when I notice they need it. I have this pond, which we call the Rosetta's Pond, behind the house. And it's filled with rainbow and steelhead that have come back from the last rain. It does this every season. And right now we've got some, they're just incredible. And they're very alive, they're very alert, and they've started to spawn. The males are smaller and the females are larger, and you can see them lining up in the gravel pits and just hanging out together for a while, and then she chases them away, and he comes back, and they hang out together for a while, and then she chases them away again. But I've been very successful in keeping them alive, so they can go on when the next flood comes and do it again. The fish I have that are there now, they are 3 to 7 years old, plus a lot of small ones this year's, and half have gone to the ocean and come back within 5 years. So they're steelhead, and they're ready to spawn and probably die like they usually do right after they do their thing.
Your new project's coming up.
Which one?
Well, the one that we're all waiting, anticipating, the one you're doing for Westmont College.
Oh, that's that sculpture.
That your sculpture going to be doing. That's your newest
They're
one.
using the word lift.
Lift is right. Is the key word.
Is the key word, and I'm gonna do a sculpture of 2 people. One person.
I love the one.
lifting.
I love the one you have in front of your house. Of course, the 2 dancers that are made.
Right, the couple.
Right.
I know.
That's
I
beautiful.
love their embraces.
Yeah.
I'm always doing those. The one I'm really interested in is the one for the construction company. Is figuring out how to retrofit the steeple for All Saints by the Sea.
Oh, that's right.
That's probably going to be my most
All
clever
Saints by the
thing.
Sea is your biggest project, and everybody should know that. And a lot of people know the church over there. It's one of the most beautiful. What is it? Over 100 years old, that church, right?
Cornerstone is 1900.
1900. So it's a beautiful church, and you are there.
Well, I'm going to figure out how to get that unreinforced stone.
Reinforce that beautiful
Yeah.
building and do that. All part of what you do in your life as an architect and an engineer, which is very cool. And it's quite a job. I mean,
It's
it's
gonna
not
be-
easy for the way you
I
described it
still don't
to
know.
me.
I still don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
They're letting me investigate how it's built and do some tests and see
Mm-hmm.
what's inside the wall, so I can and dig down and so I can get information. So then I'll figure out which of all the solutions would be best for them for that big old place. Anyway.
And you were telling about the particular bells or chimes in that.
Oh, they've got a really old.
It's really an extraordinary
cast.
thing how that works, right? That goes back to the 1900s or somewhere.
Well, that whole thing up there was rickety. It was going to fall down, and I would just have to go up there looking at the stone. I put my hand, and it weighs a couple thousand pounds, and I went like this, and the whole thing moved and almost fell out of the bell tower, which you can't catch. You can't go, you can't grab a bell.
Right.
You'll take it with you. So immediately I went over and I talked to Robbie, the head guy over there, and he said, well, write it down, Bill, tell us about it. And they got me to fix it right away, which was really cool.
And what are they, a series, you said, of little metal pieces or things that?
Oh, the reinforcement thing?
No, the actual sound from the organ there, you told me.
Oh, you're talking about the organ?
Yeah, the one that had,
Oh,
and you told me
boy.
how extraordinary that
I
was.
wish you could go in there and see it.
Yeah,
It looks like an alien town
Yeah.
model,
yeah,
because nobody goes in there, so they have all these tiny little pipes and big pipes and round ones and flappers everywhere, and it all operates somewhere else, so nobody's in there doing anything. So it's a very strange environment, and it's all behind gauze, and but when it's played,
it's beautiful.
I mean, it is truly religion.
Just a couple more questions I wanted to talk to you about. We'll conclude this a little bit about art, because art's not here today, but so I want to feel free to talk about him. Any last thoughts about, I do want to ask you one question in a moment, but I do want, any last thoughts about art when it comes to your everyday life, the importance of everyday life art? And I know that's a big question. I want to try to keep it simple, but in everybody's life, they need the whole element of art to give them that balance. And they probably don't even know what it is most of the time, but.
It's a different line of communication, and it can bypass all words and letters and all kinds of things and go right to a person's soul, bypassing the body and everything. That's the quality. I mean, you can get art and the quality can be so incredible that you understand it so well that it just becomes part of you all the time. It's in you. And people say when they see the Mona Lisa, and just go close and look at that smile, they never forget that smile. Why?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's such a small painting.
It's
It's like a postage.
No. But why does that happen?
Right.
Because the quality of that communication is so perfect for that little look that it's perfect for us as a human being. We look at it and go, wow, that is just incredible. But we do that with other things too. And abstract art was one of the things you said that. So we have more freedom now to experience more of the emotions, and it's safe for us now to do that. And that's where I think people should understand that living is art. I mean, you are participating the same way the definition of art is. How best can I explain what I mean? The higher the quality, the more understanding and duplication. It's almost scientific, it's almost physics. Because understanding means duplication. Well, that means I'm recording everything and duplicating it? I guess so. So that's going on too. We're like a machine.
So after all these years, if you had one day or 1 week of all these years of all those things you've done, and you've done a quite incredible agenda in your life, what one day or 1 week would you like to relive again? Just that
I don't
one
know.
day. There's got to be one day, 1 week somewhere that it would pop and you say, I would like to be that, do that one time, one more, just relive it.
I think sailing does that.
You were talking about sailing the other day. So
Yeah, sailing can do that, especially by yourself. Go out by yourself.
you
sail.
sailed all the way from what, Mexico, all the way up?
I brought a boat up. I've done it solo and did the Transpac.
Would you say that would be the one period of time that?
No. I'm looking forward to one period of time.
So you haven't
Still.
You haven't lived that day yet?
I have.
That's your philosophy, which is great.
I want to build a sculpture, a kinetic sculpture, and the only thing I can think of doing is doing it a cartoon that explains exactly how we exist with everybody else. Not with the bodies.
Wow, that's a big challenge.
I know. And I've got sketches on it already, but I'm going, oh,
I love
gotta
your new
build that.
alphabet. You're the only, and I told you that you need to introduce the world to this brand new alphabet.
I don't know where that came from either.
I don't either, but that's
It
an
just
extreme.
one day it came
We
out,
talked
it came
about
out
art
just
one
like
day,
that.
and you showed this art, and when you looked at it, so well, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Using triangular pieces, you can create
Only
a whole
two.
new alphabet.
Only 2 triangular pieces, you can do
A
everything
to
with
Z.
them.
Yeah,
And it's recognizable.
yeah.
Again, one of the things about art, if you're really doing it, is you don't think about its use
Mm-hmm.
or where it's going to hang or where it's going to sit. That's for later. You know? Stay with what you're doing, I always say.
So how many things in life are you in love with then?
Oh, boy, my goodness.
Now
Well,
you-
I have,
now
I have
you-
2
you-
daughters here that are
Two
have
beautiful
been watching us
daughters
from the
who-
director's
right.
room.
And they
Shaylin
definitely-
and Shanoa, who are
Def-
now waving to me and giving thumbs up.
There you go. Got to say
That's
hello to the
probably
girls.
my most valuable, plus
All
my
right.
2 sons.
What other loves? How would you put all your loves together? Art, the music,
Well,
your sculptures.
I probably, because of my age, having this phenomenal privilege of having 2 daughters is probably the best reward I ever got, because I must have done something right to get that. Somewhere I did a lot of good things to be rewarded with their love.
And
So
they're
I-
cute too. You're going to have a lot of problem with the boys, you know, when
I
these
know.
kids when they grow up. You
Well,
know, you're going to have.
GPS, I'm putting a
That's
GPS
right. You
on
got to
their
stay.
neck.
You got to stay on the planet, you know, for a little while
I'm,
longer to make sure that keep the boys off the yard.
I'm going to try to
Having had 2 daughters right now, I can tell you.
You keep warning me about these things.
I warned you
I'm
about
making
them.
a list. I'm making a list. I promise. I promise.
Well, we got a minute left here. I want to say thank you very much for being on the show, Bill. It's great.
My
Bill and I are
pleasure.
very good friends, and you're an extraordinary human being. You are a Renaissance
Oh.
man. You do so many things. There's so many,
I
and
don't
every
wanna
time
be
I
bored.
talk to you, something else pops out, and I go, "You did what?" I mean, you are like this little Jack in the Box. Suddenly, things are just. You've done so many things. So you've lived quite a full life, and anyway, and you're going to live even a fuller life with those 2 beautiful daughters of yours. Thank you very much for being on the show today. We're out of time. I'm seeing that they're going to give me the close down any moment. We will. Thank you for joining us here at Santa Barbara Forum. I will not be with you next week, as I'm your guest host. But thanks for joining us and being here at TV Santa Barbara, new channel and everything. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
Good show.
Always a pleasure.
And your 2 beautiful daughters are
I
watching.
know. It's,